Sex workers of Reddit, have you ever fallen in love with a John? What happened afterwards? Not the SW, but the partner of one. I was going through a stressful time in my life and things weren't working out the way I had hoped. I was single and was always making time for other people and never felt like I was getting what I wanted in life. I knew nothing about sex workers at the time, and had never seen one before. I did some research for about a month or so and came across this girl's ad. She seemed legit and from what I could see in her pictures, rather attractive. I booked her and was beyond nervous scared leading up to the appointment. When the day came I went over and the cutest girl ever opened the door and welcomed me in. We talked about ourselves pretty much the entire night. I had only intended for this to be a one-time deal since it's so expensive, lol. But I decided to see her a few more times. I noticed she started letting me overstay my appointment time more each visit and I started getting suspicious. I didn't know if this was normal, or if she was into me. I liked her a lot, but I figured this was her job and she probably just wanted to keep me, a steady income, around. She started doing other favors like making me dinner and my mind started going crazy and had to know what was going on. So I confessed that I liked her and hoped that was okay, and asked her to clarify what she had been doing, and what it meant. Turns out she totally had feelings for me. We decided to date and now we're getting married. When I was in Amsterdam I did a red light tour, and the tour guide told us how when he was young and inexperienced he shopped around the windows for a while, found the beautiful woman he'd ever seen, and kept coming back until he worked up his nerve. Eventually he went in, stayed in there talking to her until about 4 in the morning, then she took him back to her place. That was 9 years before he told us the story and they'd been together since then. She still worked as a sex worker and he was so open about everything, it was really interesting to get such an outlook from a tour guide. My fiancé is a stripper at a bikini bar. I used to frequent her club because my friend's sister was a bartender there and would hook me up on my bar tab. I met my fiancée and got to know her pretty well over the next 2.5 years, then one night we were both there for my friend's, the bartender, birthday and got pretty drunk. She told me she had a crush on me and then later said she wanted to go home with me, which she did. A year to the day after that I asked her to marry me, and I've been in the best relationship of my life for almost 4 years. God, this was years ago when I was 21 but it brings back a lot of emotions even now. One of my regulars was a disabled gentleman in his 50s. He had broken his spine in an industrial accident and was paralyzed from the chest down. He'd gotten a large settlement and invested in property including his beautiful accessible cabin on the lake. He'd pay for me to spend weekends with him there as well as trips to the coast and the casino where he would give me money to play slots or see a show while he played cards. He was kind and funny and had a comforting nature. I had bad experiences with men, but his disability made him vulnerable and open in a way that moved me and put me at ease. I even learned some of his care routines so I could be with him for longer periods. He died when he developed a clot in his leg that broke free and got into his lungs. I didn't find out until 2 weeks afterward. His passing really shook me. I thought I had distance. I didn't realize how much I cared for him until he was gone. Related only, but one of my friends with unlimited business expenses was hosting in NYC clients from London. That night ended up at a strip club across the street from my home, and $1,000 in lap dance tickets, $20 each, in the middle of the table. I tried one, not my thing, so I pocketed 3 of the tickets as souvenirs. A year later, my nephew was visiting me as he turned 21, so I gave him the 3 tickets and sent him to the strip club. He did not return, but called at 8 a.m. I'm making breakfast over at Don's place. They went out for a few months. I worked as a stripper and fell in love with the manager. I saw girls always fawning over him leaving some tips on stage so he would bring them back to the dressing room and they could flirt with him. I assumed it was a phase and tried to ignore my feelings. At the time I was suffering from chronic pain and an eating disorder. He just cared so much and went out of his way to help. We've now been married for 15 years and have 3 children. A friend of mine's sister and her friend are sex workers. They both fell in love with the same customer. The bloke was a bikie and I'm pretty sure they loved the free drugs he gave them, not him. They had a huge blowout over this guy and basically didn't take long before they stopped communicating. They both confessed their love for him and he cut ties with both because he wanted to spend more time with his wife. I did a short stint as a stripper. One night I had an odd guy come tip me while I was on stage and kept trying to get my number. After I got the guy to leave me alone, another man got out of his booth and threw $20 at me, praising me for how I dealt with the weirdo. I finished my set on stage and sat down with that guy to thank him and chat. He had his boss in the booth with him and it turns out his boss loves anime as much as I do, so we hit it off. I was a part-time stripper so my schedule was inconsistent, but boss man always tried to come by and buy me drinks and just chat. He never wanted a lap dance or to go to the back room, always just wanted to have conversations with me. We talked about anything and everything, we were the same kind of weird. We exchanged numbers shortly before I abruptly left the industry and disappeared for months to try repair the crappy abusive relationship I was in, but we never texted each other. When I was in a dark place surrounded by unsupportive people, I texted him out of the blue asking if he wanted to hang out. He was so excited. According to some of the dancers that worked at the club, in the months after I vanished he would check every weekend to see if I was working, and when he didn't see me he would leave. In any case, one date led to another and now we're engaged. We're still working out the perfect alibi for our families on how we met, but most of our close friends know the whole story. Friend of mine did. She'd been sex trafficked, held against her will to work off her visa and had her passport confiscated. He was a client of hers and when they got close enough she told him her story and he worked with law enforcement to get her out. They've been married over a decade now. Using my throwaway. I was a sugar baby the moment I turned 18. Started having sex with a 60-year-old doctor. I was poor, so the constant showering of gifts, money, dinners, vacations, and clothes, I guess made me fall in love with him. All I would think about was Lonnie, fake name, and what amazing thing Lonnie had planned for us that day. One day I get a call from Lonnie and he tells me, we can't see each other anymore because he had caught feelings for me. I took this as my opportunity to tell him how I felt and I really thought we would get married. He then told me, I can't be in love with a whore, so I have to let you go and move on to another girl I don't have feelings for. I was broken and depressed for a long time. I ended up using some of the money he gave me for therapy and eventually I got over it. I was sort of a sugar baby. He wasn't super wealthy and didn't shower me with luxury. I was freshly 18, he was 40. I met him through a mutual friend who initially thought nothing of it. Eventually we started hooking up in a very DOM/subway. He got me small gifts, i.e. clothes, makeup, jewelry, paid for my tattoos, paid for hotel stays, Disneyland, etc. We eventually got to know each other and realized we had a lot in common and got along well. We both knew it was a fantasy that couldn't last. Finally we admitted we had fallen in love. I knew it would never work as he had 3 kids, the oldest one being my age and the youngest one living with him still. He was also legally married but they were separated. Eventually we parted ways as friends, but not a day goes by that I don't miss him or what we had. From the customer side, I was in relationship with a sex worker, one of the best of my life. We met as you would imagine, but without going into too many details, she was different and I soon became obsessed. I would see her every chance got. I was living in another country at the time so had no real friends and she helped me with a lot of things, getting an apartment set up and stuff like that. I hoped we were heading for more than a client/customer relationship but did not want to jinx it. One day she did not take the money I left out and when I pointed that out she got upset and basically told me I was an idiot for not noticing that we were now in a relationship. She was a sex worker for a few months and mainly had regular, after that it was just me and her. I loved her and I know she felt the same about me. We were together for a little over a year and even when we broke up we stayed friends. That was over 10 years ago and we stayed in touch after. We have been on holiday together since. She has visited me at home. She has now moved back home, is running a successful business and is getting married soon to a guy who really looks after her. I still care about her and I'm glad that she is happy. I'll start with my story to get the ball rolling. Former sex worker. When I was 18, I began seeing a married man in his early 40s who treated me with respect, genuinely listened and helped me with my school, and we hung out a lot too without having sex. After about 3 months of seeing him almost every day, I started to become attached. Then one day I told him that I thought I was in love with him, and he told me, "I still love my wife. I only keep you around for your head game." I was devastated and never saw him again. Ironically, I ended up in the only healthy relationship I've ever been in. We just clicked on our first date, laughing and having so much fun, and felt like best friends after the second date. We are getting married soon. My boyfriend is so smart, so hardworking, and such a good dad. He's so sweet and nurturing to me. He's actually the only boyfriend who has treated me like an actual person and cares about actually knowing who I am. If I listed all the things I love about him, my comment would be so long that nobody would read it. Being a sex worker is not what most people imagine. They think it's getting treated like garbage by perverted, hideous sadists. Just gritting your teeth to get through horrible, disgusting experiences. I mostly only met guys who were divorced, worked from home, and new to the area, just hadn't had any luck on dating apps. They were all normal guys with good education and a good head on their shoulders, just lonely, or too busy/not interested in having a girlfriend at the moment. I only slept with guys I enjoyed spending time with. It was actually a big step up from the guys I had normally dated. The few people who did treat me like a piece of garbage to throw away were people in my life who judged my choice. I've never used the term John, just client. While I haven't fallen head over heels for a client, I definitely have a few clients that I love. It might weird them out, so I wouldn't tell them, but it's the truth. You meet some very interesting, caring people in my line of work. Never fallen in love with a client, but I do love some of them. My first ever in-person client, and favorite regular, is an absolute sweetheart and has a lot of the same kinks as I do. Seeing him has the same excitement to it as hooking up with a hot friend. We had to cancel our last session because of lockdown, and I miss him a lot. I was a stripper for a short time. A guy in his 20s had friends who worked at the club. He would sit around and drink with the girls, and I was introduced to him. He gave me some attention, and at the time I had very low self-esteem and I was worth his time or something. I really fancied him, not because he was particularly handsome, nice, interesting, or anything really. I was just really alone and felt unworthy. I would pay for everything we did. I trusted him in my apartment alone. I was at work one night, and when I came home, my wallet that I had hidden, but not well enough, with $4,000 in tips was gone. I asked him about it and he denied taking it. I was naive and believed him. I heard he was sleeping with one of the girls from the club but didn't believe it. I didn't look after myself and got pregnant. I had a bit of a moment on stage where I cried and ran off and left. I never went back. He broke up with me over text message. I had no friends and couldn't tell my mom. I took a large dose of Seroquel and lay in bed uncomfortable for hours, not being able to sleep, but was far too uncomfortable to be awake. I was sick. Weeks later, I caught a long bus journey to get an abortion. I never saw him again, and the thought of him makes me sick. The thought of how I didn't look after myself and how desperate I was for attention makes me even more sick. I worked as a dancer in LA and I met my husband at the club I worked at. We got married last year and have a 2-year-old, smiley face. We are madly in love and no one knows how we actually met, haha. Our life is beautiful together, smiley face. Most people don't realize most of sex work is actually just getting to know someone very intimately. Lots of clients just want to talk, to have a bond, to forget something. Sometimes that bond is simply business, but it's no surprise that people do fall in love beating heart. I was a regular customer of a camgirl back some time ago. After few stints, I gradually started telling her not to take off her clothes and just talk to me. I loved her personality. She gave me her Skype, and I thought, okay, and after 1 or 2 Skype meetings I asked her for her PayPal to transfer the money. She was pretty angry because she thought this was a friendship or a dating call, and she said she liked my weirdness and general demeanor. We continued Skyping for some 2 months more, and now we are actually friends. First-time Reddit poster / long-time lurker. I've had this happen to me as a customer, twice. I'll mention the one that still hurts. TW, suicide. I dated an adult film actress who had worked for numerous big production companies. I was an active Twitter user, few thousand followers, but nothing special really. I just came across as a cool dude in his early 20s who chicks found funny and attractive. I befriended a few people in the adult film industry, and once more girls realized I wasn't a weirdo. It snowballed into partying/hanging out with girls on the regular. I started talking exclusively to a girl who would fly out to come see me very often. She would tell all of her industry friends I was her boyfriend, while all of my friends would question me as to how they could also find a porn star girlfriend. It was a pretty fun and healthy relationship where I was her escape from the stigma related to sex work, and she was just a genuine person who I enjoyed. We had a great relationship that consisted of anything and everything normal people in the 20s did. It was a few weeks before Christmas, a couple of years ago. We had plans to go to some open bar and get drunk/have a good time. She never showed up. She had a falling out with a family member as well as some other people during that short time, which ultimately led to her decision to take her own life. There's a lot more to the dynamics of the relationship and how well things worked, but that's not that important, I guess. A toxic relationship. He kept tossing gifts at me when I was stripping. Would pay just to hang out. Talked me into leaving the business. He owned a bunch of lumber and real estate, so was well off. Was a controlling asshole after we moved in together. Always yelling about something. Then he got annoying and drunk all the time. He got a DUI, and while he was locked up I invited friends over to move all my stuff out. Changed my number, got off social media for a year. Ghosted out of a 3-year relationship. He hired a PI but never located me. I only know that because that guy kept coming in asking about me, and the bouncer wrote down his name after IDing him and searched it, and his business came up. Bouncer sent me $1 via PayPal with a note to call him. I did, and he told me that a PI was looking for me, and they originally thought it was a weirdo stalker because he came in twice a week asking employees about me. I moved in with a friend an hour and a half away and camped to make money. Surprisingly, he never knowingly found me on there. He wasn't too technologically literate. He's married to some young girl last I checked, then I opened my social media back up and he hasn't bothered me in the 2 years since. Married the guy that was obsessed with me, came to the strip club I worked at every shift. I worked for like 8 months until I finally went out with him. Married 15 years, now getting divorced. Yes, but I never really considered him a John. He was a regular, but he would just come in the club and we would have great conversations and would pay for a dance just to be polite since I was working, but really didn't even want a lap dance. He isn't a lap dance guy, just has grown up with art scene people, so enjoyed certain types of strippers and found them interesting, and a great way to take a break from his now corporate life. We quickly became more friends outside of work, and if he came in while I was working it would be expected he pay me for my time, but he had the money to spend so he didn't care. Then eventually we started going on dates and we became official, and he would just drop me off at the club on the way to work and pick me up after. A year later we moved across the country together and we're coming up on 2 years. We haven't fought once and very happy.